This week we're going to cover some final details in your writing and some of the final details in APA formatting of your manuscript. So as you have your first draft due, it's always important to remember that the first draft is not expected to be perfect. So I love this quote. I don't know who needs to hear this, but the aim of the first draft is not to get it right, but to get it written. You're submitting several drafts, and for this first completed draft, what I really want is for you to get everything down on paper. If you have time to do some editing and revising before you submit it, even better, but there will be multiple stages of editing and revisions. So I expect this to be a work in progress. So as you have your final draft written, when you finish when you have a completed draft written, think about going back through at least one time, and you'll do this in the coming weeks as well, and think about revising. So I want you to look at the focus. Are your paragraphs and your sentences direct? Are they saying what you want them to say? I want you to think about organization. Does the content of each paragraph fit together? Do the sections fit together? Are your sections way too big or way too short? Think about development and support. Do you have support for your thesis? Have you expanded on your ideas in a complete way? And also the mechanics. So look at grammar, spelling, punctuation, all those things we talked about in the beginning of the semester. So as you are revising, there's a couple of things that you can do, a couple of activities that you might try. So peer review, we're going to do that. That's going to be kind of a way that you will get feedback, but it shouldn't be your only one. As you're revising on your own, you can think about doing things like reading your paper out loud. When we read it out loud, it forces us to kind of focus on the wording, and we may skip awkward phrasing as we're reading in our head, but reading out loud can draw attention to that. Another really good strategy is a reverse outline. So especially if you're struggling with organization, after you have your paper written, try to create an outline based on what is in the paper. So can you identify the key points in each paragraph and how you expand on that? If you can't do that from what you've written in your paper, it's probably a sign you need to go through and do some more organization. Related ideas, listing paragraph main ideas. So you should be able to read each paragraph and identify what's the main point in this paragraph. If you can't, you might need to add some more in. Always using word spell check. It's very simple and basic, but it's the first line of identifying errors. And also I encourage you to go back to the original assignment. Look at the rubric or the description in the syllabus, anywhere where you have a description of the assignment, and this can help you identify, have you actually addressed all of the problems? Another thing that students sometimes struggle with is writing the conclusion. What I don't want from your conclusion is a, very close summary of everything you've already written. Okay, so I don't want you to just repeat what you're saying. The conclusion should be your main point, what the takeaway message is, what you want people to walk away with from your paper. So if you can't imagine yourself dropping the mic after the final sentence in your essay, your conclusion needs to be stronger. Okay, so think of it as your mic drop. What is the main takeaway point? So a lot of students struggle with conclusions. And so I get these summaries of your paper, which is not really helpful. You've been thinking about this for several months. You know the content. And so as you're writing your conclusion, I want you to think about what you want to get out of it. So what I would like you to do is pause this video and do a 5-minute free write. Set a timer. Don't look at your notes and don't look at your paper. You should know the content. Think about big picture ideas. Okay, so as you're writing your conclusion, or as you're doing this free write, think about, does the evidence support your thesis? What do you want your reader to get out of the paper? Also, expanding on this, something new that might go into your conclusion, why does this topic matter and what are future directions in this topic? So that you don't spend your entire conclusion repeating what you already said, Thinking about the importance of the topic and the future directions are really great ways to add in new information to your thesis or to your paper. Okay, in addition to just getting the content of your paper down, you also need to format it. And you've done a lot of the APA formatting in terms of the references, but you also need to get your manuscript structure in place. So you need a title page. You don't actually need an abstract for this assignment, but some assignments you may. You need your main body. Again, for this assignment, because you're not writing an entire manuscript, you won't have a method, results, and discussion, but you will have a main body and you'll have your references. So some general formatting things: Times New Roman, size 12 font, everything should be double spaced. Make sure you indent the first line of every paragraph a ½ inch. Text should be aligned to the left margin. You should make sure that you're using a third person point of view. You shouldn't use I, me, we, so on, okay? So avoid the first person and try to use active rather than passive voice. So these are things that you can read through your whole paper and look for. So on your title page, you need a couple of things. One thing on your title page and on every page, you need a running head. And so a running head is a shortened version of the full title. And so you need the running head on the left side and you need your page numbers on the right side. You also need the title of the paper, the author's name, and the affiliation. So again, you don't need an abstract for this paper, but if you did, this is just kind of what goes into an abstract for an APA format to paper. So the abstract is a paragraph summary of the paper. Contains basically a summary of the important information from each section. It should be 150 to 250 words, and it's got the word abstract centered at the top of the page in bold. Okay, so the main body or the text of your paper, if you have an abstract, it starts with page number 3. Page 1 is the title page 2 is the abstract, page 3 is the text. If you don't have an abstract, it starts on page 2. The heading of the first section of your paper is always the title of your paper again. So we are calling the first section of your paper an introduction, but you're never going to have the heading introduction. You're actually going to have the title again. The text of your paper should all be double spaced. All sections should follow each other without a page break. The exception is the results section. So you do have a page break there, but otherwise you don't insert page breaks between sections. You need to identify sources using in-text citations. So by now you should be familiar with those. Just a reminder to never refer to an article by the full title within the text. We always refer to articles by the author's last name and the year. Levels of headings is very important in that it kind of provides structure for your paper. So at the broadest, you have your level 1 headings, which should be centered, bold, and title case. Okay, so this is the main sections of your paper will have a level 1 heading. Within those main sections, you may have subsections. So maybe you have a section on cognitive development. And so that would be a level 1 heading. It would be centered, bold, and title case. But then within cognitive development, you talk about memory and you talk about intelligence. And so those are subheadings because they fit within cognitive development, and they would be formatted as a level 2 heading, which should be left aligned, bold, and title case. If you have subsections of those, then you'd have a level 3 heading. You probably won't have more than 3 levels of headings. So this is just an example of what it might look like. You can see here that the method is the broadest heading. Okay, so it's centered in the page. Every word is capitalized because it's title case and it's bold. Within method, the student has a section on the sample. And so it's because sample fits into the method heading, it's a subheading. It is left aligned and capitalized. Instruments also fits within the method heading, and so it is also left aligned. It's a subheading. Some general rules for writing numbers. In APA format, we use words to express numbers below 10. Okay, so if you have numbers below 10, you write it out. Children participated in 5 trials. You use figures or the numerals to express numbers 10 and above. A total of 75 children participated in the experiment. I've used the number 75 to indicate 75. The exception is that numbers that represent ages should always be in figure. So if you are writing a paper about children and you're going to need to talk about specific ages, you actually use the numbers instead of the words for the ages. Also, any number that begins a sentence or a title or a text heading should be in words. Okay, so if you want to say 75 children participated in the study, even though that number is greater than 10, and therefore I should use figures, because it's the beginning of a sentence, I would need to write it out. Now this can get really awkward if we're using bigger numbers, so really what I recommend is that you reword the sentence to just avoid this so that the number is not at the beginning. So saying something like a total of 75 children means we no longer have to write out the word 75. Purdue OWL has a lot of excellent resources on example manuscripts for how to format your manuscript. So I really encourage that you to take a look at these, see what they look like, and see how use those to kind of copy what that formatting should look like. And there are other examples on Canvas as